Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. This is for anyone who leads a team. Maybe you own a company. Maybe you're a CEO. Maybe you're a C-suite level executive, and you want to up your game. You want to have a true connection with your team. The only way to get that done is to have somebody walk that journey with you. That's why a lot of sports professionals have coaches. If you're in that role of leading others, you should have a coach too. Found one. She's amazing. She has decades of experience, much of that with many large companies that you may have heard of. And we're going to talk with her today about how she can lead you to bigger profits, better connection, and just a better life in general. Melinda Bickerstaff joins us today on the program. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Delighted to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, looking forward to learning a lot in terms of what you offer and how you got to where you are. I want to pose this question first. If somebody considers themselves a leader, what is the difference between a manager and a leader? Maybe they're a little foggy on that.
Yeah, a manager usually runs the operations. A leader is probably the person who creates that vision and says, we're here today and I want us to get there tomorrow. And then steps back and strategically thinks about how to get there and then creates a buy-in for people to follow them to get there. But the operational side in terms of the tactics is usually at the managerial level.
When it comes to leaders, where do you think many of them fall short in not truly getting the job done like it should be? And or what do you hear from a lot of the leaders that you work with now?
Well, it's really a good question. There are a couple things that I see. One, leaders don't absolutely create that kind of vision to begin with. They might have it in their mind, but they don't articulate it. And if it's kind of like I'm in Washington, D.C., and if I want my team to go to New York, they don't get off the station in Trenton. You know, I say we're going to New York so that we all know we're going to New York. So creating that vision is really important. And leaders often think that, well, they know where we're going. I don't need to talk about it. But what's important about that is creating that picture. You know, particularly if you're transforming organizations, which we're doing every day, and that's the job of a leader these days, and say, you know, let me talk about how our organization would look like in the digital age. Let me describe what our customers would be saying. Let me describe what you would be saying as an employee. Let me talk about how your work will be different. And then the person can go, oh, I kind of get where we're going. So the second thing often that leaders miss is really developing their own people to get there. You have two jobs, one to create that vision, and the second is to develop the next generation. And to develop the next generation is spending time with people, making sure that they understand what you want them to do and providing a coach or mentoring role for people, which is why oftentimes with leaders, I teach them coaching skills because coaching skills are very, very different than directing. You know, leaders typically have four roles. They tell somebody what to do. You know, they teach somebody what to do. They mentor someone. They say, well, I've done that before. Let me tell you what I've learned. And then they're a coach. Being a coach is really very, very different in terms of, particularly with the younger generation. The younger generation, they want to be coached. They don't want to be told what to do.
Let's go there for a moment. Looking at, not to sound old, but younger generation, in my view, they've kind of changed the way life and work work in terms of a work balance. And I believe, at least from my vantage point, it started, I don't know, around 2011 at Google, where now you got this big, huge company, big then, bigger now, and they provided their employees with daycare, a gym, it could be walk in, get whatever you want for lunch. It's on us. It always is. Video games in the lobby. It was a different scenario. What are your thoughts on that work-life balance?
Well, oftentimes, even when I work with the very senior executives, part of the issue is their own work-life balance. And the older generation had no work-life balance.
It was work.
And in many instances, they are leading companies. They're in their 50s or 60s, and they grew up that way. So they have the expectation for the younger generation to behave the same way. And it ain't going to work. Yeah. Because the values now are completely different. The younger generation wants a life and work. And work is not their life. And so the values are very, very different. So that's why there's often a struggle between senior executives and people that are below them, that they're going to say, well, why don't they work till 9:00 at night like I did? Well, I have a family, and you've got to take that. So that's the change in mindset. Oftentimes when I work with senior leaders, I help them. They've got to change their mindset, in terms of understanding the values of the current workforce. And the values, frankly, are healthy. What we did before wasn't healthy.
Yeah. But I do believe that came from what was instilled in that generation from the one before, where you had the Depression and a lot of financial challenges there. So when work came back into view after that, and was like, all right, we're going to work hard. We're never going to let that happen again. And then you have burnout and lots of challenges. How do you at this juncture, connecting with your team, how do you really make that true connection, a genuine one, with the people that you lead?
So again, I go to the second thing that's really important is to develop people, to develop that next generation. And you got to have a conversation with them, and the conversation isn't always, I want to climb the career ladder. The conversation with them is, you're in this role now. What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself headed? What kind of role would you eventually like to be in? What skills do you want to learn? And so you have that conversation with everybody, and then you make sure that happens for them. And they will be with you forever if you treat them like a human being. And, and then you provide the learning opportunities that they told you. They'll be really surprised because someone did that. And someone listened to them and said, well, maybe over here, if you want to try that role out, why don't you team up with that person? And let me create that opportunity for you to do that. And you can shadow that person and kind of be a learner and see, is that something you really want to do? So that's what I mean by stepping back and in a more human-centric way, asking, on my teams, if I had 10 or 15 people, I did that with every individual. And then they were astounded that I made that happen for them. And I also appreciated that some people didn't want the next level. They wanted really to learn, but they didn't want to go up the career ladder. So if you understand that, and again, it's understanding what motivates people and helping them get there.
How do you foster trust?
Well, just by what I said.
Okay.
You foster trust. If someone says, I'd really like to learn that, and then I create, as their manager or leader, the opportunity for them to do that, they begin to trust me. Because they tell me what they want to do, and then I act on it. And the worst thing I could do is not to act on it. And believe me, not everybody does that. So in the workplace, when that happens, they're with you forever. Because you have created that sense of trust. You said, and when you can't make it happen, you are just honest and say, I can't quite make that happen. Let's figure out something else. But you problem solve it. You treat them as an adult.
It brings back memories, Melinda, when I worked with a company. I was there about 10 years. And the manager that was there, general manager, and this wasn't my opinion. This is how I felt, but everybody else felt the same way, that when you went into his office and he would, open door policy, come on in, you never felt comfortable. You never truly trusted him. You felt that he would throw you under the bus to save himself at any moment, which he did in some in some instances with people there.
Right.
It just was never a positive experience. It was the hot seat every time you got, quote unquote, called in. He left. They got somebody else. He was a little bit better, but there was also the lack of trust. You
Right.
just didn't feel. And then they got somebody else in there, and all of these people, by the way, I knew them through the industry all through the years, but I never worked directly with them. The gentleman that's in that position now, and I don't work for that company. I'm actually they're a vendor of mine now, but I work with him on some capacity, in some capacity. But the difference is he genuinely cares what you think and will ask lots of questions. And he's curious. And when he says, yeah, let's go get a beer and talk about that. Yeah, let's hear it. You feel that he really wants to. And he's connected to you. And what a radical difference between these three individuals. So you can see the different styles. But it's hard when you're in it as a leader to realize what you're doing. And I believe that's why you need a coach. What makes you different when it comes to coaching leaders?
Well, there are a couple of things. One, I've had an interesting career of being inside large organizations and also inside consulting. I've been at Deloitte & Touche, I've been at KPMG, and I've been most recently at Accenture, big firms, okay? And in between, I was the Chief Human Resources Officer, I was the Chief Learning Officer, and I was the Chief Knowledge Officer. So I sat in the C-suite and reporting either to the president or the chairman of large organizations, okay? So I understand the challenges. I understand how to create a vision. I understand about developing people. So I am often paired with very senior people in similar roles. For example, where I've been, we grow by acquisition. And when these leaders come into this behemoth organization, I'm usually their coach because I help them figure out how to navigate it, okay, in a way that's really important for them and to keep themselves intact. The second thing is, I've done a lot of coaching over the years, and I'm at the very highest level of certification. I'm what they call a master's coach.
Wow.
There are about 1,500 of us in the world. Rigorous education, recordings and mentoring and all of that kind of stuff to get there. So there are not a lot of us who are at that level, and I coach a little bit differently as a result of that, based on my experience and also the kind of the credential that I bring.
Do you feel that a lot of leaders or considerable amount deep down inside feel that they have what's called imposter syndrome? I'm doing it, I'm here, but there are some doubts within them in terms of what they're doing?
Yeah, we all have that to some degree, some more or less. And part of the coaching experience, going back to creating trust, is oftentimes people tell me as their coach, the only time I can get off the treadmill is when I'm with you. And I'm non-judgmental. I don't tell them what to do. I listen to them. And, the thing that's missing in the world today is listening. We don't listen to each other. It's kind of the attention society. Chris Hayes has just come out with this great book about attention. And oftentimes when we think we're communicating, we say we're not really listening. We're not really engaged in the conversation. So a coaching experience, people get a chance to have someone really listen to them. And people say to me, it's the only time someone really listens to me. When they have that experience, then they take it down to the people in their organization. They understand the coaching process because they've experienced it, and then they replicate it with people that report to them. And they come back and they experiment with it, and they come back and they say, wow, I learned more about this guy than I ever knew. And he's been working with me for 5 years.
Wow. You brought something to light in my mind that I never really processed. And yes, I agree with you. People don't listen to other people. But I'm thinking that a lot of this has come from social media, because now you have a platform, or many, where you're throwing things out there, you're sending things out, your thoughts are going out. And maybe we have forgotten how to listen. And brought to mind right away, there's call it a social media business platform to talk about your business and get business. And what is it called? Bark. So what are you doing? You're barking to let people know about you, but are you really listening? Do you feel that, in our technological society now, that has a lot to do with people not listening as much?
Yeah, we're bombarded with information, and we're glued to our phones.
Yeah.
I walk into a restaurant and I see people, sitting at a table to have lunch or dinner, and all their phones are on their table. It's like a gun. You put it on the table and you put your phone, and then they look at their phones. They're not really having conversations with the people who are sitting in front of them. So it's become an addictive society in terms of that. Well, I'm going to miss something.
Tell me about the other aspect of you, master coach, but also master storyteller.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Early on in my career, I did a lot of volunteer work for the American Society for Training and Development. It's now called the Society for Talent Development now. And we were trying to figure out as an American organization how we could go global. And then we thought, well, the American population won't buy into this. So what we did was we created a newsletter and pretended we went global. So instead of our major conference being in Houston, it's now in Paris. And instead of all the chapters being in the United States, there were chapters in Budapest, in Russia, in Poland, in Paris, in France, and Germany. Okay, and we created that picture so that people could see where we were headed. And so it's like creating a future story. And guess what? It worked.
Let me make sure I have this right. This didn't exist. It was, let's put this out there so people perceive us to be bigger than we really are.
Right. So We said, that's the vision. This is where you want to go. And we think this is how it's going to be. And you make it up a little bit, but you step in, and people go, wow, that would really be neat to go to a conference in Paris. How can we make that happen? So when you put it out into the universe like that,
yes,
then people can potentially say, they can get excited about it and make it. And it took us about 2.5 years to get there, but now this organization is completely global. So that taught me a lesson. And it's not just about creating a vision as a leader. It's about describing what that really looks like. So every role that I've had, whether it's in consulting, working with a client, working with a major organization, I've created this future picture. And it becomes the strategic plan for that organization for 2 or 3 years. And it's about bringing it to life. So that's the power of story. So since then, I teach people how to do this. And I teach them storytelling. And it really is true. In your brain, if you present facts and figures and data like we do, because we're so much data analytics, people may or may not remember it. But if you put that context in a story, it will be 22 times more memorable. And more importantly, it will hit 7 parts of the brain. The emotion, it will hit feeling, it will hit visualization, like the story that I just created about going global. You could picture a conference in Paris, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, if I just gave you a fact and figure, it hits 2 parts of the brain. So story is really, really powerful. And it's not about sitting around the campfire. It's not that. It's about really using it like I did in that organization as a strategic leadership tool.
Love it.
And that's how I positioned it as a leader. You probably need to know how to do this if you're going to lead and transform organizations.
Before I ask you another question, can you give me those stats again? Because I want to share them. 22%, if it's a story, 22% more likely to be remembered?
Yeah. If you present a fact and figure, like a large insurance company reduced something by 50% and saved 1.5%, and it's 2 parts of the brain. If I then say this insurance company reduced something by 1.5%, and what that meant And of the 90 to 100 claimants that they had, they are much happier now than they were before. And then also the single mother, Anna, who now needed her refund or her funding, would now get that 2 weeks earlier because it was reduced by 50%. Now, what people will remember is the 90 to 100 happy claimants, and also the single mother, Anna, in the story. So you take facts and figures, and I call it humanizing it so that it's 22% more memorable. And I do this exercise with I've worked with probably in this organization 60,000 people around the world to teach them about this.
Wow. I'm so on your page, Melinda. Everything is a story.
It is.
You write a review for a restaurant, you're essentially telling a story. Right. Even when you put a post on social, essentially you're telling a story, or should be. It's a very short one, and it should be crafted in such a way that it can be retained and understood very quickly. It's still a story. And going back to the worldwide organization, air quotes, that you created, would you also say that was a little bit of manifestation going on there? Because you created something that didn't already exist, but then it was with the goal of making it exist.
Well, it was created out of whole cloth, right? The organization had not they had not had that experience, and so what I do is I teach them the structure of a story, and then I teach them how to humanize data. And they bring their own story with them in the workshops that I do, and then they tell it 3 or 4 different times. And I teach them the structure. They tell it cold. The structure, they tell it better. Then I teach them about analogies and anecdotes. They include that, it's better. And then I teach them how to humanize data, and it's powerful. And it goes from being this long. Whenever I ask anyone to tell me a story, it's like, tell me a 3 to 5 minute story. Guess what? It's always 10 or 12 minutes. Because they hit out and they don't know the structure and they haven't really thought about it. So then I have them think about the structure, and then because they throw everything but the kitchen sink in it, and you don't need everything in it. You have to be clear about what's your purpose and what do I want you to do with this story? Do I want you to go, wow, sign me up? Do I want you to go, tell me more? Or, gee, this is fabulous. Can you do that for me? What do you want someone to do? You've got to think about that before you do your story.
I call it CPR, context, purpose, and results.
Right.
Think of it that way. And there's somebody in my circle, when he tells something or explains something, and he's a great guy, but we have to say the same thing. One word, laser. And he knows it. It's almost a running joke, but it's not. He's well aware of it, and he doesn't even know he's doing it. So we just have to reel him in with that one word, laser.
Yeah. And you can see how important this would be in a client setting.
Oh, yeah.
Because usually when we do all of our homework, and we fall in love with our own stuff. So we want to tell it all. But if you know the structure, then you're really, really clear about what you want your audience to do with this. And so there have been a lot of studies in the consulting world, and in the organization that I've been working with has been losing business to another consulting organization, because they're better storytellers.
Wow.
We have the analytics and we have all the crap, and we tell it all.
Yeah.
And when we do that, we make people feel stupid.
But if you can take that information, weave it into a story where now you've pulled them in where they can relate to it, the results are going to be different. We're out of time. Fabulous. Fascinating talking with you, Melinda.
Thank you.
And that's my story. How do we connect with you? Let's somebody is looking to up their game in terms of what they're doing, leading a team, even just refining how they tell stories to get better results. How do they connect with you?
Yeah, a couple ways. My site is under construction. It's Melinda at the Bickerstaffgroup.com, or you can currently reach me at melindaBick at AOL.com.
Thank you for being here today. A lot of insight and lots to think about, and looking forward if there's a chance we get together again.
Okay. Thank you kindly. Great question.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Appreciate you. We'll be right back.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. Childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.